that has not yet been diagnosed. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but I think it's true. I mean, maybe you have the sense that there's something missing within you, that something isn't quite right. I know those symptoms are kind of generic, but let me just say, I can give you some specific symptoms so that you can see if you have this, okay? So if you're a man and you walk into your garage, you may have this disease. If you're looking at a 2-year-old car and it runs perfectly and you think to yourself, I need to trade this in for another car. Or maybe you're a woman and you have this disease. You walk into the closet where there's clothes all around you, and you say, I've got nothing to wear. A person with this disease might look in the mirror and never like what they see. They're always wondering, how did I end up with my mom's thighs and my dad's nose? A person with this disease tends to compare their spouse to another person. And they're always wondering if they could have gotten a little better deal. And they think they probably could have done a little better. The disease makes us think that we need to make twice as much money as we're currently making. Now, if you have this disease, it's really important that you do not go to your friend's new house, because especially if they have like the latest countertops and you don't, and they have the iron spindles on the staircase and you don't, and they have a finished basement and you don't, you better stay away. But here's the question. Is there a cure? I mean, is there a secret to finding contentment in our lives? Well, that's what Paul talks about here in Philippians 4. Listen to what he says in verse 12. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content. And so Paul says that the first thing I want you to realize is that contentment is learned. It's a learned thing. It doesn't come naturally. We're not by nature content people. I think we contract this disease of discontentment pretty early in life. Robert Hastings pictures us on a train ride. So imagine yourself going down this long journey on a train, and outside the window there are fields of corn, rolling hillsides, city skylines, but you don't really notice those things on the train because you're absolutely focused on getting to the station. In your mind, you've decided that the station is the place where you'll find fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness. So you walk up and down the aisle, you're pacing the aisle there on the train, looking at your watch, wishing the train could go faster, because if you could just get to the station, everything would be good. Here's what Hastings says. He says, the name of the train is more, and the name of the station is contentment. When I just get to the station, when I turn 16 and get my driver's license, when I finally get my degree, when I have enough money to buy the car that I've been looking at, when I lose the weight, when I find Mr. or Mrs. Right, when I can retire comfortably, when I get to the station, I'll find happiness. The train is called more. It's always headed to a station called contentment. Now, is that the secret that Paul is talking about? How do you find contentment? Because this is the message that is communicated to us by our culture constantly, is that you don't have enough. We're bombarded every day with messages that we need something else. Now, to be honest, if we were really pushed on what it took to make us content, we would describe this. We would describe that our life needs more of something. We would describe a change in circumstances or a change in our situation. But do you hear what Paul said? He says in verse 12, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, in any and every situation. Here's the thing, contentment is an intrinsic thing. It comes from within. It's not based on externals. So contentment doesn't come and go based on the size of your bank account or on the mechanical reliability of your car or the strength of the stock market or the housing market. It is not based on the prognosis from your doctor or the shape of your body. These things on the outside don't bring us lasting contentment. So here's the question. If it comes from within and it's something that we learn, then what lessons do we need to learn in order to have contentment that can be found in any and every situation? So in verse 10, Paul says these words. We've heard them before. I rejoice greatly in the Lord. That's lesson number one, is to rejoice in the Lord. I can be content in any and every situation if I will be disciplined. It takes discipline. If I will be disciplined enough to look to the window of the train and see all the ways God is blessing, to take note of His grace and His forgiveness and the promise of eternal life. I will always have a reason to rejoice in the Lord because He's given me what I could never deserve, what I could never earn on my own. There is a joy there. There is a peace there that cannot be matched. So when's the last time you just wrote out a list of blessings that come from God? Whatever situation going on out there, you know that inside you can rejoice in the Lord, but it starts by counting your blessings. So a missionary returns from the island of Tobago where she was working with a leper colony. And on the evening before she came back to the United States, she led this leper colony in a time of worship. And she asked, is there anyone here that has a favorite song they would like to sing? A fingerless hand was raised in the back row. And a woman with no ears, she's missing her nose, her lips were gone. She said, could we sing Count Your Many Blessings? Whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance, there's still a reason to rejoice in the Lord. Well, Paul goes on in verse 10 and he says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. And then he says in verse 11, I am not saying this because I am in need. Well, it's interesting that he says that because Paul has plenty of needs. He doesn't think of himself as someone in need, but he is in need. I mean, he's under house arrest. If he doesn't pay the money for this house, he's going to be thrown into prison. So he has to have money for his house, money for his food. He is in need. He's been unjustly held as a prisoner without any kind of charge for years. He needs freedom. He needs justice. He needs some sort of satisfaction there. At any time he could be executed. He needs peace. He needs some comfort. But he doesn't think of himself as someone who is in need. Why? I think it's because Paul has learned not to compare himself, his life, and whatever is happening in his life to other people. Because nothing robs us of contentment quicker than comparison. So here's another difficult lesson for us. Resist comparing to others. 2 Corinthians 10:12, Paul says, we do not dare to compare ourselves with those who think they are very important. They use themselves to measure themselves, and they judge themselves by what they themselves are. This shows they know nothing. There was a study done in Muncie, Indiana. They found that there was a large percentage of women in Muncie who were working. They didn't have to work, and they didn't want to work. So there was this sociological study done to see as to why these women who didn't need to work and didn't want to work were working. The number one reason was to be able to afford things that other people already had. They were always comparing. We're always comparing. Have you noticed that this about comparison is that we always compare up? I mean, don't you do that? I do that. I mean, if we were to compare down, it would bring feelings of gratitude. We would be thankful for what we have. But we don't do that. We always compare up. And no matter what level we reach, we're always comparing to the person who is one level ahead of us. And the problem with always comparing to people who have more is this: there is always someone who has more. And so Paul resists comparing to other people. Listen to verse 12 in its entirety. It says, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Now, Paul speaks to us as someone who's been on both sides of the track. He knows what it is to have a lot. He grew up in a pretty well-to-do family. He went to the right school, yet he's under house arrest. And so he knows what it is to have little. Paul has been through plenty of tough times. So if you're looking for material blessings to satisfy that need in you, you're never going to be content. It doesn't matter if you have a lot or if you have a little. So what is the secret? Where is contentment found? Well, Paul gives it to us. He says, Jesus is all you really need. It's Jesus. It doesn't mean you won't have troubles or struggles. It doesn't mean that you won't have trials in your life, but it means that Jesus is enough. He is enough. He put it this way in verse 13, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Paul has learned that contentment is not found in anything out there, but it's found in this inner strength that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. He is the one who truly satisfies. So he talks to this church in Philippi on contentment. And the word that he uses for contentment is a surprising word. It would have been very noticeable to his readers because it was a word that was taken from the pagan belief system known as Stoicism, the Stoicism of his day. And so people who followed this pagan belief system were called Stoics. And at the foundation of Stoicism was this word that Paul used for contentment. I just want to kind of touch on Stoics for a moment, this pagan belief system. On their pathway to contentment, first, they said you need to eliminate all emotion. They said that is how you find contentment. You eliminate all emotion, and then you come to this point in your life where you really don't care about what happens to you or anyone else. That's not at all what Paul taught. In fact, he said in verse 19, my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. You see, contentment is not found in having this whatever apathetic attitude. No, it's not about eliminating emotion. It's found in trusting Jesus no matter what circumstances you have. The Stoics' pathway to contentment, secondly, was that you accept everything as fate. It doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't really matter what happens in your life because it's all out of your control anyway. So you might as well just be content. Again, that's not what Paul taught. In Philippians 4, he says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition, make your requests known to God. So contentment isn't found in saying, well, there's nothing I can do here. Contentment is found in turning those things over to the Lord. Another part of this false belief system was to eliminate all desire. This is what the Stoics would have been teaching in Philippi. You just eliminate all desire. If you really want to be happy, then you have no desire for possessions, have no human desire. You can have no desire whatsoever. But Paul didn't say to live without desire. He said, make Jesus Christ the very center of your life and desire him above all things. And all these things point to Jesus, the living water. They all point to Jesus, the bread of life, to Jesus Christ, the one who truly satisfies. He is the cure for our disease of discontentment. Mother Teresa said, you will never know that Jesus is all that you need until Jesus is all that you got. And so it all comes down to this. If Jesus is all you had, would he be enough? Paul thought so. Our relationship with Jesus was more than enough. Bev Shea came across a poem that she thought could change the course of her son's life. And so she left the poem by his piano, and he found the poem and started to hammer out music to the poem, and it moved him just like his mother intended it to. So instead of going to work for NBC following a music career, he decided to travel the country singing for God. And the song that he put music to, this poem, was a song that kind of changed the trajectory of his life. The words were, I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or land. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hand than to be a king of a vast domain or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. And I think this is the word of Philippians to us today, that Jesus is all that we need.